Welcome back to the shop. Hot Rod here. Back on the TA today with the LS swap. It's been a while since we worked on this thing. We've been waiting on parts. Waited on this brake kit forever. We ordered it last September. This is middle of February. Beginning of February, excuse me. Nope. Dang it. This is the beginning of March. Been waiting since last September. Some of this stuff came in pieces. The master cylinder came in with the booster. The brackets came in and they were wrong. The brackets came in and they were hogged out. Somebody had tried to make them fit on something and it didn't work. So I continued their process just a little bit and I got them to work. But the way they were sitting, it made the master cylinder, it made the hole for the bore not go through the firewall. So as you can see, I've got the right brackets on now. I hope they don't give us any troubles. I haven't tightened anything up yet. I just put the brackets on the back of the booster and slid them up just to make sure that the bore was going to go through the firewall, which it does. A little bit of a hole that needs some sort of a grommet or something. So we've got to figure out what we're going to do there. Bailey says hello. She's been swimming. I've been trying to get her energy out so she'll let me work. Obviously that hasn't worked yet. So I'm going to attempt to finish mounting this master cylinder and bracket and the rod on the pedal, get the brake lines hooked up, and hopefully move on to putting the flywheel on, the accessories, and I gotta slide the torque converter in the transmission and we'll lower this engine in. Don't know if we'll get all that in this episode, but we're gonna get something done today. This is Thursday. I was hoping to have this thing running by the end of this week. If a miracle happens, I'll have it running by the end of the day tomorrow, but I don't see that happening. Probably be middle of next week, early next week, something like that. We've got another race to go to Saturday, and we've got some baseball games on Sunday. So that's going to prevent me from working on it over the weekend, but we're going to get as much done as we can, and then we're going to rock and roll on this thing for sure next week. Hopefully be driving this thing by the end of next week. As long as we don't run any kind of weird problems where we got to wait on a part for 6 months. Waiting on parts has been the biggest hurdle in this process. We waited for like, I don't know, months for the vintage AC kit, and just everything's been a wait. And sometimes you order stuff and you don't know that you need something else until it gets there and you start working on it. So it's hard to see in the future when you're doing so much at one time in a car like this or on a build like this. So if you like this kind of stuff, please give the videos a thumbs up. That helps YouTube know that you like the video and you got something out of it. You like me, you like the video, you like anything about it, you like Trans Ams or LSs or anything, just hit that thumbs up, man. It's free and it really helps me out and I appreciate it. The subscription's free too. Just pop that subscribe button if you want to stick around and see other content. I've got tons of videos, so go back and check the catalog out, check the playlists out. We got lots on this Trans Am and we'll have lots more. He's wanting to do the bandit run with this thing. I think he said it was in May. So we're definitely going to try to have him running before then. I don't know if he has anybody going with him on that deal. I don't have a TA, and it might look weird if I follow to the El Camino, but might be a fun thing to film. Don't know if I'll be involved in that or not, but we'll figure that out when we get there. All right, so I'm going to get to tightening up. I'm going to tighten this bracket up, and then we're going to see about our rod length inside going to the pedal. I got it bolted in. As you can see, the angle looks to me like it's going to be higher than the hood. There's the hood hinge, and that's above it. So I don't think that's going to work. I must have these brackets. Here's the old ones. I must have them. That's how these are sitting. They must be upside down. It must be angled in the wrong direction. So I get to take this back off, flip these brackets around. Yay! Well, you can't flip the brackets over, because if you do, Here's the steering column. And it'd be way too much of an angle down. So it's got to go the way I had it. That's the bracket that I had to take off because it was wrong, drilled wrong. This is the one I just took off this side. But if I was to, you know, I had the master cylinder, what it looked like above the hood line to me. I don't see how it wouldn't be. If you flip it over, it won't even fit on this side because the column. I put it on this side, and you can see the angle that it would be in then. It'd be too far down. There's no way that would work. Only other way I know how to do it would be to shim it out on the top. Once we get the hood on, we just have to play with the washers on the top bolt, I guess. If it hits, I mean, maybe it has some miracle it doesn't hit the hood, but it sure did look like it would to me. Man, this brake company, I'm not going to name their name yet, but they're pissing me off. All right, so put the brackets back the way they were. Man, let me show you this. All right, so I'm gonna put the proportioning valve on, right? So the bracket, it goes like this, mounts like that, right? So, or you can flip it the other way. All right, so these nuts, this master cylinder was already on this booster when I got it. It was shipped to me loose in a big box like that. These two nuts, one of them's 9/16. You can see it, how they're two different size nuts. You see that? So one of them basically is a 14 millimeter head, the other one's a 15. I mean, they don't even send you the freaking decent hardware. It's just, it all mismatched. This is driving me crazy. I'm pretty sure this is going to hit the hood. The master cylinder is going to hit the hood. And we're just going to have to go with it for right now, because I got to get this thing in here and get it running, and then we'll see how much it's going to have to be shimmed or modified. And I'm going to have to call them again. I've already had to get on the phone with this company. It's not Willwood. They're just the maker of the master cylinder and proportioning valve. It's another company. And like I said, we waited from September to December for most of the parts, and then got some of the parts were wrong, so then we had to wait again until last week, I believe, which was in the end of February, before we got the right brackets to even mount it to the firewall. And now, I mean, it still doesn't look right. And then, you know, go into this, just the quality and just they just must be having people just slamming stuff together. Who gives a shit? Just put this stuff in a box and get it out of here. Or this all was sent to somebody and been returned or something. I'm not sure what was going on with this kit, but man, what a nightmare. This kind of stuff right here will suck up a day. It'll gobble up so much of your time and effort. I've had this master cylinder, this booster on and off of this firewall like 5 times, fooling with the old brackets, and then twice today, just double checking myself that I didn't have it upside down or something, and that's not possible. So I'm sure you can sense my frustration. It's very, very difficult in this time right now, getting parts, getting quality parts, getting the right parts. So anyway, I'm gonna mount this proportion valve and try to plumb this master cylinder so we can move on to try to get this engine put in. But the engine's not going in this video. It's going to be we're going to wrap it up after we fool with this proportion valve. and we'll see how it goes. All right, hopefully no more nightmares, please. Okay, so normally the proportionate valve mounts on this side, and your lines come out here, and they send you pre-bent lines that go to the proportionate valve. But if I do that, and I ran into this problem on my El Camino as well, but it's a little worse on this car. The inner fender hits the bottom of the proportionate valve, and there's no way without crushing this in or cutting this out to put the brake lines, because the brake lines will come straight out the bottom of it. There's 3, 2 for the front, 1 for the back, and it's too close. There's no way to do it. I don't want to crush that in. So what I did was I flipped the bracket that comes with it the opposite direction, and that puts it mounting the proportion valve over here. So that actually worked out pretty good, because I was able to just use the factory lines and just tweak them over just a little bit and screw the fronts in, and then the rear will come out of this. I had to order an adapter to extend the rear brake lines right here, and it's a different size. I believe that's 3/8, and so I have to do a 3/8 adapter with a union to 3/16, so I can put one of these type fittings in. So the pre-bent lines that come with a proportionate valve won't work, because they normally go on this side. And let me tell you, all these fittings were hidden in this master cylinder. It was all screwed down tight, and it does say it does tell you in the instructions, but I mean, I wasn't reading the instructions because I've done this stuff before. So I haven't done the booster before, but I mean, I've done brake work a million times, so I don't get the directions out and read them. But instead of just putting the fittings in a little Ziploc with the rest of the stuff in the box, they decided to put them in the master cylinder and bolt the lid down tight. So I ended up getting on the phone with them yesterday, kind of pissed, and was like, I'm missing my hardware. And they're like, check under the cap of the master cylinder, which you got to bust out an Allen wrench and screw all these screws out, which is not a big deal, and it does tell you in the directions. So I guess technically you should read your directions. So if you order one of these kits and you're missing your hardware, it might be in your master cylinder. Goofy. All right, so I gotta run a line from the front to here, and I gotta bend a line from here to the rear, and then we've got to make an extension from here to the back brake line supply when our fittings get here. And you got plenty of room to still turn your knob to adjust the proportioning for the rear brakes. Bailey's back to say hello, and I don't think she quite understands why I talk to myself into this camera all the time. What do you think, Bailey girl? Do not jump on this car. All right, so I got to bend these brake lines up, and after that I'm gonna pop this converter in, and we gotta get putting this motor in. Way behind schedule on this car, and it's mainly my fault, but a lot of it's waiting on parts. My old back has not been good. It's been very limited. I gotta be very careful on what I do, so I don't totally whack my back out. A Jeep I did a couple weeks ago, last week actually, I threw my back out again and was down for a couple days, trying to get the disc back in position. So I got to be real careful with that kind of stuff. Getting old sucks, man. It does suck. Take care of your body better than I have. All right, be careful on four-wheelers. I think that's what killed my back. Ripping through the woods and on motocross bikes and four-wheelers so much when I was a kid probably killed my back. So in figuring out how I need to mount all this stuff, we've lost a few days here, which is not uncommon for any project right now. Waiting on parts, finding parts is a tragedy. I've been trying to find a fitting to adapt that back line, which is a 9/16 fitting. Okay, right there. It's kind of hard to see because everything's black down in there. That's for the rear brake line. I've bent one line from the master cylinder to the proportioning valve here. I've got the 2 factory lines for the front brakes hooked up to the proportioning valve, so I need to attach this rear port to that line there, okay? But finding the fitting that allows me to adapt a 3/16 line, I'm just using this as an example, because these were the pre-bent lines. If you're going to mount the proportioning valve right here, which would have crammed my lines into the inner fender like it did on the El Camino if you watched that video. So we plug these off. We're running them from this side to the proportioning valve on this side, yada yada. All right, so this is a 3/16 brake line. To step a 3/16, which is a 7/16 fitting, to a 9/16, it's a lot more difficult than one would think. Ended up finding this. I went to all the local auto parts stores. I went to all the local box stores like the Home Depots and the Lowe's and the AutoZones and the Advanced Autos and the O'Reilly's and all those types of places, thinking somebody's going to have this, especially in the automotive world, to adapt a 9/16 fitting. No one even had a 9/16 fitting at all. I couldn't step it from 9/16 to maybe a half and then step it again. Nobody had it. So we have a local company. Well, it's not just a local company. I think they're all over the United States, called Royal Brass and Hose. They're not a sponsor. Hit the subscribe button and hit that like button if you get anything out of this content, please. I appreciate it. Royal Brass and Hose. I went down there and they had one little deal, one little setup, and it's this deal right here. So this is hand tight, but I got it a little too tight, playing around with it. All right, so basically this is a union. So this is a 9/16 union. That'll screw onto my brake line, and then that will screw. So that'll screw into the brake line. Hopefully y'all can see this. And then I can make a brake line and screw this into there. I was going to use a union. I was like, hey, if we get anything with a male fitting, it doesn't have to be a union. It can be 9/16 to a male, kind of like this. This is what I ordered from, I thought this was the right size. I ordered this from Summit. It's a Willwood fitting, but the flare's the wrong way, and this is a 3/8, and it's not the right size. So maybe these are 3/8. Okay, I called that a 7/16. It's a 3/16 line, 3/8 fitting, going into this 9/16 union, which steps it from 9/16 to 3/8. So this piece right here is a 9/16 male to 3/8 female. So if you're ever running into that problem, I'm lucky enough to have, within about a 25-minute drive of that Royal Brass and Hose. We also had another hydraulic line company I've used a few times. They used to sell a lot of AN fitting stuff for fuel lines, but they don't anymore. I went down there, but they didn't have it. So, all right, a lot of running around. Guys, this gobbled up 5 days. 5 days. It's fun with working by yourself. So, all right, so I need to make up the brake line from here to over there, and I need to make one from the bottom for the rear brake over to there. Not a big deal. Just gotta flare my fittings. So I'm using this tubing, and I've got fittings. Don't need this at all. So we're just gonna make 2 totally new lines. And if you don't know how to use a double flare kit, you're about to learn. Okay, so when we start bending our lines, it's got to be straight. It can't be all bent at the end. You start to mount them in your flaring tool. So you got to be careful with that. It's got to be pretty straight. So it's got a little crook to it, so I'm going to try to straighten it out without having to cut anything. Take it, try to tweak the end a little bit. It's got a little kick down left to it. The reason these things are taking me so long, you know, like I said, I ordered the wrong fitting, and it was my fault. I didn't really know exactly the sizes I was dealing with, so when I ordered this fitting, it was 3/8. I needed 9/16 on this side and 3/8 on this side is what I needed, but it didn't need to be flared out like that. It needed to be inverted. So the brake line, well, yeah, because I was going to use a union on it, and I was hoping that would come off my rear brake and this would go like this, but they're both flared out, so that wouldn't work. But you know, I ordered that on Thursday. It said I was going to get it the next day. I didn't. It showed up Saturday afternoon, like at the end of the afternoon, and I already gone to the drag strip to do some filming up there at Brainerd, which is about 100 miles north. So then by the time I got around to getting back on this project on Monday, I realized I don't have the right fitting still. And everything's supply and demand. When you cut these with a tubing cutter, it often smushes that tube inside a little bit. So I'll take just a straight pick and just open it back up. This is soft tubing. But when you do that, it oftentimes, to get your diameter back normal, I'm not using much pressure either. It's soft tubing. It bends like butter. I'll take a file and just file it back. When I'm done cutting everything, I'll blow it out. Make sure there's no filings in there that are going to screw up any kind of, you know, master cylinder valving or proportion valve or calipers or anything like that. So yeah, I called on a customer's car earlier, or friends really, needs an engine for an 01 Chevy 2500 pickup. The local dealers who I usually buy the engines from, so a minimum of 1 month back order on all engines and transmissions. That's crazy. I can usually get the stuff in the Atlanta market. I can usually get it the same day or the next day. 1 month backed up is nuts. $2,500 core charge right now on a 6-liter LS motor. Nuts. So if you were to go buy that motor with no core, it was about $4,800 for the long block, and it's got a 3-year 100,000 mile warranty. So 48, let's just call it 5, 6, 7, 70, $7,300 is what it would have cost if you didn't have a core, just to go buy a stock long block. That engine right there I got from Summit last year, that's going in the Trans Am. It's 500 horsepower, LS3. That's only 8,500, I think. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be buying a stock short block for that. And I texted him about it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll pass. I might just find me a whole new truck." I was like, I don't blame you. That's what I'd do. That's exactly what I would do. pull it out and rebuild it. Okay, to do a double flare, I've got this little deal here. It's a Titan 51535 is the part number. It's a simple little flaring tool. Works really well. This goes in the end right here, and that's your stop, so you don't go too far in with the tubing. It gives you a sight glass with an arrow, but when you put the stop in, it doesn't allow you to go too far in. So you stick your tubing in until it stops on the stop. Make sense? So all the way, and then you've got to tighten it down so the tubing doesn't move when you start to flare it. You want to make sure before you get it cinched that you're still butted up. You got the tubing all the way in, because if it's not all the way in, it's not going to flare correctly. This is a very simple process, but you can screw it up, and I have, because I wasn't all the way in. All right. I'm just double checking that I'm in before I cinch it down. I believe I'm in all the way. Looks like it through my little peephole. You don't have to get too crazy with it, but you definitely want it to be tight, because I have not tightened it enough. So once you get it up there and you look through your sight glass and you're on your stop, you take the plug back out. Double check this real quick. Where's my light? I didn't like how loose that plug was when I started backing it out. I'm triple checking, so I don't have to cut the dang thing off. It's easier to triple check it than it is to have to cut the tube at the end of the tube off because it didn't flare right. So this is the most critical part right here, and it's not difficult. Never done one, never made a brake line. It's super easy. And if you get this stuff instead of the steel, it bends like butter, and it's really easy to bend around corners. You can use a socket to bend it around and make a nice smooth transition, nice smooth curve, or you can use a tubing bender. I've got tubing benders. I hardly ever use them because this stuff's so easy to bend around a socket. All right, and this is what's making your double flare. It's got a flare on one side and a flare on the other, or a die. So it says OP1 with an arrow, so this is your position 1. It comes with a little bit of grease, so you want to put a little dab of grease in the end of your tool just to give it some lubricity. You want to lubricate that bad boy up so it doesn't gall anything when you're flaring it out. It's 11/16. So basically you just tighten it up. Starts getting a little pressure on it when it's about like that far out, and I'm holding the tubing in one hand and this, but you're supposed to hold this with your hand. Just try not to bend the tubing all up, that's all. So I'm just gonna let it rest on my belly here. I'll turn it in until it stops. back it out. Once it hits the bottom, you just back it out. You flip it around. It doesn't say position 2, but you've only got 2 positions, so once you're done with one, you flip it the other direction, right? And it's more than lubed up enough. I got too much on there really, so I'll have to wipe off this fitting when I'm done. Screw it all the way in by hand. And the same thing, you just bottom it out. When it's bottomed out, just run it out and hope it flared right. Usually it does. Sometimes it does not. I've read reviews on people complaining about these kits not working well. I have no problems with them. I messed the fittings up before, flaring up, yes. But it's been user error, not tool error. And no, I'm not sponsored by Titan either, but I'll take a sponsorship if you want to give me one. Okay, so we got a little grease on there. As you can see, you got a double fitting. And as you can also see, I didn't slide my fitting on first, so now I've got to slide it down from this end. Or I can go ahead and bend it and cut it with my tubing cutter, and then I'll slide my fitting on this way, and then I'll crimp my other, or double flare my other side. But you want to make sure you have your fittings on first. That was a major mistake right there. But it's very fixable at this point. If you were to flare both ends without putting your fittings on, then you're never getting your fittings on. So, you know, basically, you're going to end up with an end like that. But yeah, it flared out just fine. There's a little bit of a shard right there, just a tiny bit. I'll just take a file. And this tubing is so soft, once you stick your fitting on and you screw it down to seal it, it's gonna mash itself into its sealing phase, I guess you call it. It's going to seal itself up because it's soft, crushes down and seals. You don't have to worry about it. But I just don't like to leave those shards on. When I cut this tubing, when I figure out exactly where it's going to land, I'll blow through it and make sure there's no shavings in there, like we talked about before. Okay, so basically I'm going from there to there, and what I will probably do, I'll probably put one loop in it. See how these are looped? I'll probably do that once, or it'll come out and just have one curly Q in. I may do that, I may not. I just got to play with it. I'm going to cut it off and give myself a little room to sculpt it into position. And if I think I need to put a loop in it, I will. It has plenty of spring in it. It's pretty. There's enough line. Sometimes they loop them like that to give it a little suspension. That way, if you got body flex or suspension flex or whatever, it will. It won't break the line off. But all that's not real necessary. I did a lot of loops on my car, and I really don't like the way it looks all that much, so I'll probably end up redoing it. But for now, it'll work, and let me figure out how I'm going to route this, and then we'll show you how I finish it up. I've decided I'm just going to try to run it, and then just kind of run it from the side over, and there's one loop in. So I'm going to cut it about right here, So just take a tubing cutter. When you're cutting this stuff, you don't want to just crank down on this thing. You want to barely get it tight where you can spin it around easy. And once you spin it around once or twice, you can feel it loosen up. You just barely snug it back up. Just keep a little bit of pressure on it. And every about 2 turns, you got to just barely turn the wheel, barely, just to tighten it up. And it will eventually cut through there. It's going to drop. I don't want it to drop too far, just soft. I don't want it to tear up my end. So I'm going to have it drop. Yeah, it's probably hit the floor. It's not going to hurt it. Yada yada yada. Come on, baby. This tubing's so soft, that's why I took that pick earlier and opened up the end. There we go. Because once it starts cutting, it starts mashing it. See how it closed the end up like that? So I'll take my pick and I'll just kind of, you can take a little file or a little drill bit or whatever you want. This straight pick works good. You just open your end back up. And then I file it. Just blow through it a little bit. This is where you don't want to forget to put your fittings over. Fittings that Willwood sent are tight. They don't like to slide over this tubing. So I went to Napa and I bought new fittings because for some reason those don't fit. They come with a kit. So you take your fitting, see how that just slid right over, and you always want to check your seal too. If it's, sometimes when you flare these, it'll kind of cock a little bit, and you'll be able to see it when you slide your fitting. Everything looks good, smooth. It's going to seal just fine. And then you want to slide your other one on. On this end, go in the opposite direction. So now we're going to make a fitting. We're going to flare that out again, but you already know how to do that. If you want to watch, you can watch again. If not, you can fast forward. Again, you put your stop in. Run your clamps down, which is all that is your clamp. You want to make sure it's all the way in. You don't want to put much pressure on that because there's only like 2 threads on the thing. You don't want to strip it, then you have to buy a whole nother tool for like 50 bucks or something. I don't know, you might be able to just buy that. Try to get it clamped down evenly. As much as possible. And you take that stopper back out. And you put in position 1. A little bit of grease on it. Or a lot of it. A lot of it's not gonna hurt nothing. Just makes a mess. So now I don't have that big spool of, man, my handle came loose. I don't have that big spool of tubing. I can hold the handle. Flip it to position 2. Which, like I said, is not marked. Man, you're getting a little crazy with the cheese whiz. Double flaring made real easy. Yeah. Jeez. Got the kung fu grip on that one. Like I said, I have screwed them up where you have to redo your flares. You have to cut the end off and start over. I was showing Caleb how to do one the other day, and I screwed one up. Looks good. I can see one little burr in there. Maybe grease. I'm gonna just try to pluck it out with that. Yep, I got it. It's right there. Bam. And that's how you make a double flare. Looks good. Now I can, basically what I'll do now is I'll screw it into that rear brake line, and I'll come back over to this side and hopefully just be able to curl it up around a socket. I use a small socket so it doesn't kink. So I put a socket like, well, this is a big socket. I'm not going to use one this big, but you can bend it around that. And that way it won't kink over. If you just bend it by hand, which you can most of the time, but you do stand the chance of kinking the line, and then you're stuck with starting over at that point. And who wants to do it twice? So, all right, it is Wednesday, so I'm listening to Wes Buck Show, Drag Illustrated Live. So this is what we ended up with. Got all the brake lines ran. I S'd that one. Just made an S curve to it. Over to the rear brakes. Everything's good and secure. I'm gonna have to plumb a fitting into that, into the bottom of the booster there. And there's one in the back on the other side equally to that. Right here. And then I think that's the return. So it looks like we got 2 pressures and a return. I'm not going to worry about those right now. I'll go ahead and start working on the engine and assembling all the accessory stuff and get ready to lower this thing in. And I'll slide the torque converter in. And that will be it for this video. We appreciate you watching. Don't forget to hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you hadn't already. And in the next one, we will be sticking accessories on, strapping, figuring out how I'm gonna strap this thing and lift it and lower it into the Firebird Trans Am. Finally get this thing bolted up and start laying out the wiring harness and hopefully fire this thing up in the next few days. It's been a long time since this car had any power to it, so I haven't done the rod going to the brake pedal yet because I can't get the door open far enough to get up under there and see exact measurements I need to take yet. So I'm not putting any brake fluid in it yet. I'm not worried about the rod yet until I can either push the car back and get the door open. I mean, I can do that now, but it's racked on the lift, and I'm ready to put the motor in this thing, and hopefully that will keep me motivated to finish this damn car. All right, check us in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.